Yo, what's good everyone? We are just 2 weeks away from the NFL season starting, and today I'm going to be taking a first look here at the Week 1 NFL DraftKings main slate. Now, for your returning subscribers, you all know how this works, but if you're new to this channel, or at least new to this video, let me give you a high-level overview of what I do here. I like to go position by position, talking about the plays that stick out to me early in the week, and I typically post these first look videos on Tuesday morning, or 5 days before the main slate. Being that this is week 1 here, I'm 2 weeks ahead of schedule, but just wanted to give you an idea of when you can expect these videos. And then once we go position by position, talking about the plays that do stick out to me, we're going to wrap up the video by putting together a first look cash lineup and a first look tournament lineup. And with that being said, I do actually post 2 videos on Friday before the main slate as well, breaking down my final favorite cash game plays and my final favorite tournament or GPP plays, so make sure you stay tuned for both of those videos as well. Now, before we dive into the quarterbacks here, everyone, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm going to have football content coming out for you guys all season long. Let's dive into these quarterbacks here, and I'm looking right at the top here with Jayden Daniels, $7,000. Now, if you have not drilled into DraftKings yet, they have completely changed their interface. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the way that these game logs look, but I'll probably get used to it as the season goes along. But you can just see here the pricing for Jayden Daniels. We got up close to $8,000 last year. And in the playoffs, he did come back down to $7,000, but I think we're getting him at a really good price here. I always shoot for 3x value in my cash lineups, right? 150 DraftKings points. If we do that based off of his price, we need 21 DraftKings points for him to hit value. I think he can easily do that, especially in this matchup against the Giants. He averaged 22.2 DraftKings points per game last year, so cash and GPP viable. I like Jayden Daniels right at the top. Now, I can't say that I don't like Joe Burrow here, but for some reason, the Cincinnati Bengals just always start out slow. And when it's a divisional matchup like this against the Cleveland Browns playing in Cleveland, I can't say that I love that. He hasn't notoriously played very well in those situations. Not bad, but not the 25-30 points that you're looking for in a tournament. So I'll probably be off Burrow in week 1. I really do like Chase Brown, but again, make sure you stay tuned for my final cash plays and tournament videos next Friday, because I will kind of break down who I love heading into week 1 then. Speaking of guys that I think I will love, Baker Mayfield here, $6,600. I do like this price, and I love the matchup here against Atlanta. Now, Chris Godwin is not going to be available week 1, but I think the pass catchers are going to be just fine to stack him up with. I like him more on the tournament side for sure. Could probably be cash game viable, but I think there's some better cash game plays out there. Scrolling down here a little bit, the next guy that I got on my list is Bo Nix. Now, this is both cash game and tournament viable from my opinion. I love the stacking options that we get here with Nix, and I love the matchup at home to kick things off this season against the Tennessee Titans. So at $6,300, I think I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Nix heading into week 1. Now, going back to that game between Atlanta and Tampa, I do like Penix here as well. Now, we didn't get a big sample size, if you will, on this guy from last season. He did eventually take over as QB1 towards the end of the season, week 16, 17, and 18, as you can see there. And hey, look, if he's going to come out the gates like he played in week 18 last year, I love him at this price. Now, more tournament viable in my opinion, just because it is such a small sample size with this guy, but I think that game has some shootout potential. And again, I like the stacking pieces there for Penix Jr., primarily Bijan and London. And then wrapping up the quarterbacks here, we're in this mid 5K range and below. A handful of guys that I have on my notes right now: Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, and Joe Flacco. You have Flacco there at $4,900. I actually quite like that from both the cash game and tournament side of things. And that Cincinnati defense was brutal last year, so I have some interest in that for sure. Justin Fields, I don't know what it is about this guy, but I really struggled to roster him. I've watched the training camp videos this offseason with the New York Jets. They just don't look all that great. But then again, we know the rushing upside that this guy provides, and at $5,400, what? I need 16.2 DraftKings points for him to hit 3x value. Something I really need to look into a little bit more. I kind of get scared off of this guy when I see him throw the ball, but ultimately someone that I think we need to consider for cash games heading into week 1. Again, going back to his rushing upside there. That's really the big interest or intrigue that I have with him. Now, Sam Darnold, new team here, Seattle. I do like the pass catching options with Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba. $5,300, probably more of a tournament play for me right off the bat, just because it is a new team, new offense, new system. Probably going to take some adjusting for him, but I do like that price there, and he offers that upside that we love in tournaments. If I'm shooting for 4-5x value there, he by all means could get us 20-25 DraftKings points. And then the last guy that I wanted to discuss here was Russell Wilson. Yes, I know we don't love rostering Russ, but $5,000 here. I need 15 DraftKings points in my cash lineup. You can see here he averaged 17 DraftKings points per game last season. You got the connection with Malik Neighbors, a alpha wide receiver, so considering the matchup in a game they're likely playing from behind, trying to play catch up and throw the ball a little bit more, I do think Russ is going to be both cash game and tournament viable. Now moving on to the running backs here, and who's with me, everyone? Playing Christian McCaffrey in week 1 at $7,300. Look, I understand the situation around CMC. A lot of people kind of upset, hurt from last season, probably more so on the season-long side of things, but we're talking daily fantasy here, and it's $7,300. If we were to get this guy at this price just 2 years ago, everyone and their mother would be rostering this guy. It'd probably be close to 95% in most lineups. So I'm going to take advantage of that. If he's 100% healthy heading into this season, which reports are that he is, I'm going to absolutely take advantage of this price while we have it. Now, with that being said, I do like Bijan here as well at $8,000. I think you could actually stack him up with Penix in tournaments, considering the passing upside or catching upside that he offers. I mean, look at the targets here. 7, 4, 4, 6, 2, 2, 2, 5, 5 to wrap up the end of last season. He's someone who can hit 4-5x value, so I think he's going to be both cash game and tournament viable, and the same goes for Christian McCaffrey. So those are kind of my tier 1 players, if you will, when it comes to this position. I definitely don't mind Bucky Irving here. I think that he's going to be tournament viable as well at $7,100, but didn't quite make my tier 1 with Christian McCaffrey and Bijan. Heading down here to kind of my tier 2 rankings, I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. I do like that matchup against Miami, and with Daniel Jones under center, we don't have to worry about Richardson kind of stealing that goal line work and stealing touchdowns. I guess Danny Dimes could do that, but I'm less concerned than AR-15. And I really don't expect JT here to get the volume to start the season like he did to wrap up last year, 32 and 34 rushing attempts in the last 2 games, but he should see 20-plus opportunities in this game, again in a good matchup against the Miami Dolphins. I really do like Brown here as well, someone who just got better as the season went along last season, going to be the RB1 starting this season, which wasn't the case last year, and he's someone as well who brings that pass-catching upside, so sign me up for him at that price of $6,600. And then Kyron Williams, I also think that he's going to be cash game and tournament viable, someone who's just super consistent when it comes to volume and production. I don't love the matchup against Houston. That defense should be legit this season, but again, if we're just going off of opportunity, I love it considering the price there at $6,500. And then when it comes to a tournament play here, one guy who really sticks out to me is Alvin Kamara. Now, it sounds like Spencer Rattler got the starting quarterback job here. Really didn't change my opinion on Alvin Kamara. It's just one of those situations where I look at this roster and go, okay, you have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. You're going to want to get them the ball, but this is probably still your best playmaker on offense. You're going to want to get this guy the ball as much as possible, whether that be through the running or passing game, which we know he has notoriously thrived in over the course of his career. Again, just look at the targets here. 8, 7, 11, 9, 6, 4, 6, 5, 5 to wrap up last year. I mean, that's a wide receiver too with the rushing opportunity. So I do like him when it comes to tournaments. Kind of think that game in general could be sneaky to attack. 2 teams that I'm not expecting a lot of this season, but it's going to be one of those games where we see a lot of points. And I like James Conner for that exact reason. He's kind of in a similar situation here. It doesn't matter if they're winning or losing in this game. This guy is going to see touches. So I like him on the cash and tournament side of things, whereas Kamara is more of a GPP play or tournament play for me. And then I'm going to wrap it up here with the Washington running back situation. So let me just pull up this game here quickly. I mean, your guess is probably as good as mine as who's going to touch the ball in this game. I think Eckler probably still sees most of the work, but Krosky Merritt, if you've been on Twitter, there's been a buzz about this guy, so I honestly don't know what to expect with this Washington running back group heading into week 1, but it is definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on over the next 2 weeks. And then we got the wide receiver position here, and just like the running backs, I like to put the top plays into 2 different tiers. Tier 1 for me heading into week 1 is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. all the way up to Jamar Chase. We got 6 wide receivers there, some of the most elite wide receivers in the NFL. There's really a case to be made to roster any one of those guys, but the top 3 that stick out to me first is going to be Nico Collins. Now, he got injured last year. I believe it was a hamstring injury. I think in week 5 he scored a long touchdown and then basically left the game after that, but I love the production he was offering early in the season. 8, 10, 10, and 15 targets in the first 4 weeks. That production did slow down towards the end of the season when he came back from that injury, at least in terms of opportunity and targets, but really the fantasy production was pretty much still there, so I do like him at that price of $7,400. I do like Malik Neighbors here as well, kind of talked about Russ already. This is a guy who could easily be fed 10 plus targets in this game, especially if they're playing from behind. I think he's going to be cash game and tournament viable. And then the same thing here with Brian Thomas Jr., another sophomore wide receiver who is just fantastic, especially towards the end of last season in his rookie year. You can see here double-digit targets from week 13 to week 18. The production that translated to in terms of fantasy points. His low was 16.6 DraftKings points all the way up to 35.5. I don't want to say 16.6 DraftKings points is his floor heading into week 1, but I bet it's pretty close. And then we get into this tier 2 ranking here, which is going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba all the way up to Tyreek Hill. Now, I don't want to say there's a case to be made to roster every one of these guys here in week 1. I'm sure if you dig deep enough, you could find one, but the guys that stuck out to me here in tier 2, I have 4 wide receivers. The first is going to be Mike Evans. Love this matchup here against Atlanta. Talked about Baker earlier, and being that there is no Chris Godwin here to start the season, he's the clear alpha wide receiver 1. Not that he wasn't with Chris Godwin in the lineup, but obviously Godwin's going to steal some targets. Another wide receiver who could easily see 10 plus targets in week 1, and I do like him at that price of $6,600. Probably more of a tournament play for me, but I think I could easily be convinced for cash as well. I mentioned Drake London earlier as well when talking about Penix Jr. This guy, you can see week 18 targets with Penix in the lineup, caught 10 of those balls, 43.7 DraftKings points. That was his high on the season. He played well back in week 5 with Kirk O'Chains under center, 13 targets in that game, but I'm looking forward to seeing London kind of take that next step this year with Penix under center. We going down here to Terry McLaurin, just signed a new deal. Congrats to him. I do like this matchup against the Giants. Talked about that earlier when going through Jaden Daniels. They did bring in Deebo Samuel, but I'm not overly concerned of him stealing a bunch of targets from the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Maybe 1 or 2. But again, I love the matchup here too much and the price at $6,200 to not consider him in week 1. And you could easily stack him up there with Jaden Daniels. And then the last wide receiver that I want to talk about here in tier 2 is going to be Courtland Sutton. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record here. Oh, I like the quarterback, so now I like the number 1 wide receiver. Talked about Bo Nix earlier, but that is the case here once again. Talked about the matchup. I like it against Tennessee, and this is the number 1 wide receiver in that offense. Now, if you want to do some tournament stacks, you'll be able to mix in a guy like Evan Ingram or Marvin Mims, but if I'm talking about cash games here, I like Courtland Sutton. Now, if we go all the way back to week 8, this guy saw at least 8 plus targets in all but 2 games at $6,000 at home. That's a perfect reason to roster someone in cash. And then we kind of get into the individual plays here, right? I got Three that I want to talk about. First is going to be Harrison Jr. I do like this game between them and New Orleans. I think there's some shootout potential, and I do think he's going to take the next step. I don't want to say he was disappointing last year because he really wasn't, right? Close to 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, pretty damn good for a rookie. I just think the expectations were so high for this guy that we kind of looked at it as a disappointing season, but you look at the numbers here, they're really not all that bad, and it's another guy that I do think takes the next step, and I do like that matchup there against New Orleans. And then finding a couple of value plays that stuck out to me here early on. We're going to start with Ricky Pearsall. He should be wide receiver 1 in week 1. We need to keep an eye on Juwan Jennings. He's battling injury heading into the season and is questionable heading into week 1, so if he plays, he could be wide receiver 1, but either way, I like Ricky here at $4,500. I think this is a guy who could see anywhere from 6 to 10 targets in this game. And assuming he is wide receiver 1 with no Juwan Jennings, it's a fantastic value play at $4,500. And then we're going to get really cheap here. I typically don't do this in my first look, especially as the season goes on, just because, as you all know, there's injuries that happen. You get some value that opens up at the end of the week. But being that it's week 1 here, Malik Washington was someone who stuck out to me at the price of $3,200, has had a good training camp, has looked good in preseason. You might only get anywhere from 4 to 5 targets in this game, but I think that might be enough considering the price at $3,200. So if we're talking a lot of value and if we're looking for that, Malik was the guy that stuck out to me there. Now, when it comes to the tight ends, this is typically not a position that I spend up for when it comes to my cash lineup, but I will do that when it comes to my tournament or GPP lineups. It's actually one way to get unique with your tournament lineups, spending up at this position. There's kind of a tier 1 here, right? From Njoku to Bowers. I absolutely love Njoku in this spot here against Cincinnati, especially with Joe Flacco throwing him the ball. I think he could have a massive day. So that's going to be my favorite tight end, considering the price, quarterback, and the matchup here against Cincinnati. I don't mind Laporta, but probably not going to roster him all that much, if at all. I do like George Kittle here against Seattle, as well as McBride against New Orleans. But I can't say I have a lot of interest in Bowers. As fantastic as he was in his rookie season, he's got a new quarterback here heading into this season with Geno Smith, playing on the road in week 1 against New England. Yeah, give me McBride, Kittle, and Njoku as my favorite plays. And again, Njoku's probably my guy here if I'm going to spend up in week 1. You can see the volume is absolutely there. Again, especially with a guy like Joe Flacco. And he's a very talented tight end as well. So $4,700, I do like that price. But let's get into some of this value here, right? We're going to scroll down here in the 4K range. And there's 3 that stick out to me, and they're actually one after another. Tucker Kraft, Green Bay, $4,000. Don't love the matchup against Detroit, but he is going to be viable for me. Even more so, I like Hunter Henry here in this matchup against Las Vegas. Had a connection with Drake May last year. I don't think that's going to change here in Season 2 for May. And then if we wanted to spend down even a little bit more, I do like Cade Otton as well. Talked about it earlier, not going to have Chris Godwin in week 1. You got Mike Evans as the number 1 pass catcher in this offense. You got Ibuka. We know the wide receiver, rookie wide receiver coming out of Ohio State. Could absolutely have himself a game as well. But I like Otton here at $3,800. He had some big games last year, 21.7, 29.1, 21 DraftKings points, so the upside is definitely there. Again, considering the price too. Scrolling down a little bit off of that, if I want to save even more money, we got Strange here. I think he's going to take the next step as well with the Jacksonville Jaguars this season. He got a little banged up at times last year, but all reports out of training camp is this guy has been fantastic. Love the matchup against Carolina. Like the price even more. And then Pat Freiermuth here. We know that Russ isn't afraid to throw to his tight ends. I actually was looking at his game log here and was kind of shocked towards the end of the season how well he was playing. So considering the price there at $3,200, I think he's a guy that we could punt in week 1. And then I'll keep it short and sweet here when it comes to the defenses. If I can find the money to spend up for the Broncos, which should be one of the better defensive units in the NFL this year, I want to do that here at home playing against a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. You know, I talked about it earlier. I have concerns with Justin Fields in that new offense for the New York Jets, so I like a talented Steelers defense defense here as well at $3,300. And then if I'm looking to save some money, the defense that stuck out to me here initially, which this could absolutely change as we get closer to the main slate, but as of right now, it's going to be the Texans. No, I don't love Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Kyron Williams on the other side in that offense, but this defense is going to be talented as well, and considering the price, like I said, they kind of stuck out to me as a cheaper defensive unit in week 1. All right, everyone, now we're going to wrap things up here by putting together a first look cash lineup and a first look tournament lineup. We're going to start on the cash game side of things here. Talked about Jaden Daniels. I do like Bo Nix, but let's just save some money right off the bat here with our boy Russell Wilson. I know there's probably a lot of you going, no, not doing that. But hear me out. It opens up a lot of things throughout the rest of our lineup. So now we're at the running back position here. I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey. We're going to spend up here. We're going to go with 3 running backs. We're going to go Chase Brown, and then loop back to the running backs here with Kyron Williams. Love those running backs right off the jump. Now, we're probably going to have to find a little bit of money here within the wide receiver and tight end position, so let's actually do that with tight end to start. I'm going to go with Brenton Strange, and let's put in Purcell as well. Even if he is wide receiver 2 heading into week 1, I like him at that price there. So $5,600. Let's open things up here. Let's see if we can get to the Broncos defense. $6,500 left over for wide receivers. Let's go. Let's put in Cortland Sutton at $6,000. That's $7,000 to wrap things up. Ooh, I could go with Malik, do a stack there with Russ, or someone like Brian Thomas Jr. I don't hate that. I don't love the double Jag stack, so let's go with Neighbors there to wrap things up. Man, I know we're 2 weeks ahead of schedule here right now, but for a week 1 first look cash lineup, I kind of like that. And then my favorite part of this video, putting together a first look tournament lineup. We're going to kick it off here at the quarterback position again, and I do like this game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's go with Penix Jr. here. Let's stack him up with his number 1 wide receiver in Drake London. And let's run it back with Mike Evans as well. 2 number 1 wide receivers who could go for 25, 30 plus DraftKings points. I'm not going to say we have to save a bunch of money here at the running back position, but let's go to the 6K range. And actually, how about this game between New Orleans and Arizona? Now, not often do you want to roster the same running backs from the same game, right? Kamara and Connor are kind of the exception because they're game script proof. It doesn't matter if either team is winning or losing. These guys are going to touch the ball. So I do like rostering both those running backs there. Yeah, I kind of like that game from a sneaky shootout potential situation. Let's go down here to the tight end. Save a little money here. Being that I already have Evans, I'm not going to go with Auden. Let's go with Hunter Henry. And let's put it in defense here as well. We'll mix it up a little bit and go with the Steelers this time. That gives us $5,800 per player left over. We need a wide receiver and a flex. I'm going to go ahead and put in Thomas Jr. since we didn't put him in the cash lineup. And that's going to give us $4,900 left over for the flex. Now, I could go back to someone like Ricky Purcell. What do we have here for options? Can't get to Laporta, maybe Pittman Jr. Can't say I love that, though. Honestly, what I kind of like here is doing a double tight end stack and going with David Njoku. And that gives us, what, $200 left over on the table if you wanted to spend that elsewhere? By all means, you could. But again, kind of like this for a first look tournament lineup. Alright everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that.